Welcome, everyone.
Good to have you with us on New Year's Day.
Happy New
Happy
Year!
New Year. It's New Year's where we are in our corner of the world.
And maybe earlier for some of you.
Yes.
We have the privilege today to have Peter Vidmar with us, and we are so excited that you can have a chance to spend time with him.
We appreciate him coming in. We appreciate High Five Live for letting us do this series on gathering. And they are such a fantastic team, and they have videos every single day to inspire you and to help your day go more smoothly. And what a great thing to think about as we go into this new year.
That's right. And so wherever you are, we'd love you to get on and tell us where you're coming from and where you're listening from and a little about you so that we can respond to your being with us. And there we go.
Some if you have any questions, put them in the comments and we'll try to get to those too.
That would be so great.
Yes.
So we'd love to give you an invitation. I mean, an introduction. That's what I meant. To our wonderful friend, Peter. Oh, wow. This is such a treat. Can you imagine meeting the highest scoring Olympic gymnast in U.S. history?
He's right here with us today.
Can you imagine being with someone who's on not only the U.S. Hall of Fame in gymnastics, but the International Hall of Fame, and has done more good and more things with that wonderful honor to do selfless service. So let my wife tell you a little bit about some of his accomplishments.
Well, we don't have all day, but we'll just tell you a few things. So he has been a gymnastics anchor for both CBS and ESPN, right? And a motivational speaker for over 30, probably more than that now, 30 years, and inspiring people all over the world. He's been co-chairman of the U.S. Olympic Committee Summer Sports Summit. You still doing that?
No, you know what? I'm retired from just about all of these things. That was a while ago, and I'm happy to shape grandchildren now. So
yes, and he has 6 grandkids, 5 children. And he just moved to Heber, Utah,
where he shoveled his first snow.
Yeah.
No shoveling of snow in my life.
He has so many accomplishments, and we'd love you to just read about him. We've got that all on.
And to watch his videos and all that.
Yes.
But just returned as a mission president from Melbourne, Australia.
Melbourne. There we go.
Yeah. Say it. Australia waits.
Say right, mate.
Exactly.
So today we have this great privilege of having Peter tell us about lessons from his life. And thanks to all of you that are on. We have a whole list of you that are coming on, and we welcome you all. And Peter, I remember one of the first times I met you, hearing you tell a little about how you trained and how you finished up all the training every day. And that, I don't know if you tell us a little about that, because we're thinking about training in the new year, right?
Right. Well, you know, at the first of the year, we always think of what do I want to accomplish for the year? And we tend to set out our New Year's resolutions and goals and things. One of the things that makes life a little more, makes goals a little bit more attainable, I think, for an athlete, is there's always a deadline attached to it. You know, I wanted to be an Olympian, which means that I wanted to be in the Olympics that are going to be held in July 20th, whatever, 1984. And that day is going to come and go. And if I'm not ready for it by that day, well, then it's too late. So we tend to have, you know, today, and then we have our goal down the road. And sometimes we tend to move them forward, this, you know, and we push our goal down the road because we have the convenience of doing that. Athletes don't. You know, the Super Bowl comes on this day, the Olympics comes on that day, and you have to be ready for it. So you have to kind of prepare for it. And so so I always knew that I had to structure my training and my goal setting with these dates in mind, you know, the Olympic trials, the Olympic games and things like that, and my collegiate career. And so I think it's good for us to maybe not just establish goals for ourselves, but maybe some deadlines. Don't get discouraged if you don't reach the deadline, because of course you can readjust, but it's nice to have time spans attached to our goals. So one of the things that helped me in the gym with my teammate, Tim Daggett, who was my best friend on the Olympic team, is to, our motto is practice as if it's competition, but compete as if it's practice. In other words, every day is important. Every day matters. You can't just say, well, I'll work hard tomorrow. Well, if you keep doing that, then when tomorrow comes, it's actually the day of the competition and you're not prepared. And so at the end of each day, when we're tired and we're exhausted, usually that event or that apparatus at the end of the day was the horizontal bar for us. And many times we're on that last routine of the day. We're exhausted. We don't want to do anymore. We want to go home. And I'd look at Tim or he'd look at me and say, hey, Tim, why are we here? What are we doing this for? What's the goal? And is it worth working for right now? And the answer, even when we were tired, was always, yeah, it's still worth it. And so we would imagine that last routine was the Olympic Games. It was the men's gymnastics team finals. The U.S. team was on their last event of the night. It just happened to be the horizontal bar because that's what we're working at the time. And that we are neck and neck with the People's Republic of China, the reigning world champions, and we have to perform our routines right now perfectly to win the Olympic team gold medal. Build that scenario, and then we kind of laugh and say, yeah, it's never going to happen, but hey, it's good practice. And we would do that, and that would help to put the pressure on, to make us give our best effort, especially now when we're exhausted and tired and don't want to do another repetition. And so we would go through the motions, and if I made a mistake, I felt like I lost at the Olympic Games. But if I made it successfully, I felt like I won the gold medal, and I drive home every day going, I just won the Olympics today. That was great. I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And we knew we would never face a situation like that, but we knew it was good preparation for us. And yet a funny thing happened on July 31st, 1984. It was the Olympic Games. It was the men's team finals. The U.S. team was on their last event of the night. It just happened to be the horizontal bar. And the last two guys that just happened to be Tim Daggett and Peter Vidmar. And we had to perform our routines perfectly to win the Olympic team gold medal. And so we step up there under all this pressure, and both Tim and I were able to successfully complete our routines, and we were able to win the gold medal. And I'm so grateful for that kind of preparation that took place, not days before the Olympics, but months and maybe even years before the Olympic Games. Because so many of our goals and objectives are not weeks down the road. They could be years down the road. And we still need to do things today that help us to prepare for those things far into the future. I don't recognize that enough, even after all I've been through in life. I need to get a little kick in the pants to keep that motivation going for the things that really matter most as well.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
That's such a fantastic story. We've been watching the videos of you doing that very routine at the end, and it was
incredible.
Spectacular. Would invite everyone to get a chance to do that.
No, thank you.
Is it just an inspiration to all of us? One of the things that absolutely overwhelms me is, so you achieved this fantastic goal and had incredible notoriety because of that internationally. But what you've done with that has been such a focus on selfless service, on caring about others, on family. I love your talk about relationships matter most. And tell us a little about what you've learned from that and how you've used that great gift.
Well, my life in gymnastics becomes, oh boy, how do I say this appropriately? Well, it did, so many of those experiences shaped me and taught me important lessons. Doing my best to try to, be a disciple of Christ, to recognize my mistakes and to repent and to move forward. Those lessons have far greater meaning as time goes on. When you're a 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kid and you've devoted your life to a sport, that becomes your world, because I really didn't have much to think about other than myself, in a way, in that, and I don't mean to be in a selfish way, but it was self-focused because I only had me to worry about. But now I'm married, I have children, I have grandchildren, and those relationships are so much more important than a sport, that I can only basically just use what I learned from my sport and help me to be better in other more important things. And by far, the gospel of Jesus Christ is infinitely more important than my life in sport. And so I think that time and age and life gives us perspective as time moves on. And we're not, you and I are not, we're not teenagers anymore. So
well, she is.
You look like teenagers, but all of a sudden, other things take on more importance. And so I don't really dwell much on what happened back then as much as I dwell on what's really important now moving forward. So
Sunday story.
And the motivation about, you kind of knew that when you were younger. Tell us about how you didn't train on Sunday. I don't know if you want to say a word about that or.
Yeah, I'll be honest. My first few months in gymnastics, the only time they had training was on Sunday, and my parents, I'm not going to fault them for it. We had the divided block in church. You had church in the morning and church in the evening, and in between there was a time to go to the gym, and I did. But that was just something that I wanted to do because I was a kid. I loved gymnastics, and my parents, for some reason, saw some promise in me. And then
for some reason.
And then when I was about 12 and I became a deacon, all of a sudden my testimony grew. My testimony of the gospel of the priesthood, and workouts weren't on Sundays anymore. And my coach lined us up one day and says, "Hey, we're going to have workouts on Sundays again." And I, right away, without even thinking about it, I said, I can't do that. He says, "Why? You did it before, and that hurt." And I said, "But it doesn't make it right." I said, it's the Sabbath, and I need to not. I don't want to do gymnastics on Sundays." And my coach kind of didn't understand, and so I was kind of kicked off the team. And I don't fault my coach for this. I just want you to know he's a wonderful, integrity-filled man. He was giving everything he could to his athletes, and so he was hoping for everything in return, understandably, at that level. And so, but when he realized that it wasn't my parents' decision, that it was my decision, I think he had some respect for me because of that. That I was trying to stand on my principles that I developed in a young age regarding the Sabbath day. And so when he realized that, then things got better and let me back in. And make a long story short, he was the head coach of BYU for 14 years, and they didn't have workouts on Sundays. And so he's not a member of the church. He's probably one of the most principled, integrity-filled persons I've ever met in my life, and I've learned so much from him. I'm still very close to him. As soon as we got back from our mission, we went down to visit him. He's moved to Hawaii, and I actually went to visit my coach, not just go to Hawaii. And,
right.
And he's just a terrific, honorable, human being. And so, anyways, but I don't feel like I feel like that was a plus for my gymnastics career, to have that day to take off, to not think about gymnastics, to think about things that are much more important. And I think that blessings come physically when you honor the Lord, but also they come more importantly spiritually when you try to do the right thing. So, and I'm still learning.
So you've told us that feelings motivate a lot more than just visualizing some event or something. As we're thinking about that, you want to say a word about that?
Yeah, that's a good point, I think, because there's a lot of talk, especially in sports circles, about visualizing success, a lot of in self-help publications and content. And I think it is really important to be able to catch the vision of what it is that we're trying to become or try to do or try to accomplish. But I felt, I believe that if I can somehow capture the feelings I would feel having accomplished something that's meaningful to me, that I'll be even more motivated to work hard for that. Because I think we're more motivated by our feelings than by our vision. And so instead of asking, how would I look if I were able to accomplish this in gymnastics, I would say, how would I feel if I do this? What would it feel like to be on the victory stand? And when I could somehow imagine that and get those swelling feelings in your heart of, wow, that would be amazing to feel that, it makes me want to work a little harder. And even more so when it comes to spiritual principles and gee, I have no idea. I can't comprehend what exaltation would feel like, but I sure know it's worth working for. And, and being able to participate in the grace that the Savior offers to us, because I make a lot of mistakes. So
someday in the future, you're going to meet your grandpa, and your dad was such an example to you. That touches me deeply to know about your father's challenges.
Want to share anything about that?
Just a really quick family history for me. My great-great-grandfather, Solomon Chamberlain, was baptized by the prophet Joseph Smith.
We read that. That is amazing.
It is amazing. And he actually had the George Church be restored to its apostolic authority, and that a book would come forth like unto the Bible, and that be led by that, as well as the Bible, and he would live to see the day. That's an astounding, revelation for this man. And this was in 1816. So, and he went about talking about it. People thought he was crazy. And then he got off a barge in upstate New York on a canal and asked if there were any religious happenings in the area. and someone said, "Just Joe Smith and his gold Bible," derogatorily. And he said the Spirit told him this is what he's looking for. And he was led to the home of Hiram Smith, and he met him, and he ended up being baptized, joined the church, was one of the first missionaries in the church. And so I really, and he lost his wife crossing the plains and winter quarters. And my roots go to his second wife. So I have a great reverence for those that have sacrificed so much and everything for the gospel and for the cause of the building up of Zion. And I'm grateful for them. But my grandmother, Hazel Red, met a man named John Vidmar, who was an orphan raised in the Mormon colonies in Mexico. And they were married, and my father was born when my grandfather was working in the mining operations in Chile. My father was born in Chuquicamata, Chile in 1921, and my grandfather never had a chance for a formal education, and really wanted his children to have that. So he made the sacrifice and basically shipped his wife and children up to Southern California while he stayed in Chile until he could find steady work in California. And for a few years, he had to work without his family so that my father could get a good education. And my dad worked very hard to get an education. And I remember asking my dad, I said, "Dad, why did you choose engineering as a degree?" He got his degree in engineering at University of California at Berkeley. And he says, "Well, I wouldn't have thought of anything else." I said, "Why, you loved it that much?" He goes, "No, I knew it would make my dad happy." And I said, "But did you at least like it, Dad?" He goes, "No, I loved it." He says, "But I just knew my dad would have given anything to get an engineering degree because he loved that field." And so I thought it'd be good for my dad if his son got an engineering degree. Wow. That's what my dad did. And so my dad worked for a company, the Byron Jackson Pump Company, which was the largest manufacturer of pumps for big heavy industry in the world. And he was working for them in Kansas City. He was 27 years old, had 3 children. And all of a sudden he couldn't swallow, couldn't figure it out, called the doctor. Doctor brought him in, did a test, and says, "John, you're coming down with polio." My dad didn't get it. He said, "Well, I've got a really important meeting later today. Can we deal with this later?" And he says, "No." He says, "You don't understand. This is very serious." And within about 36 hours, my father was completely paralyzed. He could only move his fingers, he said, and was very close to losing his life. And fortunately, he was blessed that the polio left his body, but it also left its damage. My father lost permanently the use of about 30 different muscles in his body. Where it was most obvious was his left leg, which is about the size of my skinny little wrist here, his entire left leg. And he had enough contraction of his quadricep muscle to kind of fling his leg forward and lock it into place. And so my whole life, I only saw my dad walking with this big limp, and he had other muscle in his arms that didn't work very well. I remember one day my dad came home from work, and his faces are broken, his glasses were broken. Pardon me, his face was bloodied, his glasses were broken, and my mother just said, "John, what happened?" And he said, I was walking across the street. My good leg hit a pothole, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to support myself. And my bum leg wouldn't help me out, and I just went down. I hit the pavement face first, broke my glasses. People got out of their cars and dragged me across the street, and he tells the whole story about it. And then he starts to laugh, and he says, "Wow, I got to be more careful next time." And that was the extent of complaining I saw from my father. And so we had this family motto that Vidmars don't quit. And so we kind of had to follow my dad's example. He never had to preach that to us. He just lived it. We saw the way my dad lived his life. Make a longer story a little bit shorter. My father passed away just before we left on our mission. He suffered from post-polio syndrome. Even all of his good muscles were shutting down on him. He was in a bed. And he was unconscious. My niece, Jenny, came in with her 2 teenage sons. And we knew my father was close to the end. And Jenny got to the foot of the bed with her 2 boys and said, "Grandpa, it's Jenny. I've got Charlie and Stephen here with me. Do you have any advice for them?" And I said, "Jenny, Dad can't hear you." And then all of a sudden, my dad turned, opened his eyes, looked at his 2 great-grandsons. In a very weak voice, he said, "Always say your prayers and never give up." And those are the last words my father spoke. And, that summed up my dad's life. You always say your prayers, have faith. You have to live with faith, but never give up. You also have to apply that faith by working. And so my father worked hard his whole life, and he learned that from his father. And so I am so grateful for that example I had throughout my life. And I wouldn't be an Olympic gold medalist without my father's example. It had nothing to do with sport. And so I feel an obligation to try to be as faithful as I can amidst all my failings and shortcomings, just to honor my, my father, my grandfather, those that came before me that really gave much more than I've ever given. And I'm grateful for that, and I'm humbled by it. And so life goes on. And even in these hard times, you look at, you read when, when Amulon was forcing these burdens upon Alma's people, and the Lord didn't take their burdens away, but he strengthened their shoulders so they could bear the burdens. My father prayed a lot, but the Lord didn't take his polio away, didn't take the effects of polio away. My dad could never walk again, but my father kind of had a figurative spring in his step for the rest of his life because he treated life differently, and knew he could get through this. And that was a great example to all of us. And I think in these times of COVID and a lot of the suffering that's going on, and terrible suffering that I haven't been exposed to firsthand, but I think of all those that have suffered, all those lives that have been lost, and the hearts that are broken. And yet, pain is inevitable, but misery is optional, and we can still find joy. We can still find joy in our circumstances, and the Lord wants us to understand that. And I have to be taught that over and over again.
Don't we all?
Peter, I'm just finding back tears. That is
so beautiful.
Such a beautiful story.
So, Peter, what advice do you have for those preparing to serve a mission, as far as just becoming those kind of missionaries that every mission president wants?
and any experience you had on your mission you'd like to share?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, my wife took a little survey of our missionaries as we were new mission president and wife, trying to prepare to really try to lead these wonderful, amazing young people. What's the one thing you wished you would have done more or better or whatever before your mission, to prepare for your mission? And you know what the number one response was? And now I had missionaries from 46 different countries.
Wow.
So it was a very diverse mission. And the number one response was they wish they would have paid more attention in seminary. That was the number one response. And I had just finished 4 years as a seminary teacher before being called as a mission president. And I grew from that experience probably more scripturally than any other point in my life. And I was a seminary student myself, and I had phenomenal seminary teachers. But I was also a kid. and now I think of all the lessons that I prepared as a seminary teacher. And so really immersing ourselves in seminary and Come Follow Me. I think, obviously those are inspired programs. And that's, I think, the number one. The other thing that I learned most also for me personally is that as I embarked on the mission, I had all these people telling me, "Oh, you're an Olympic, medalist, and you're going to have so many wonderful stories to share with your missionaries." And I thought, yeah, I guess I have some things that I could share. And I spent my career as a motivational speaker. But I found that as I got into the mission field, that I really didn't share nearly as many of those sports stories, my version of war stories, with my elders and sisters, because there's so much more in this. There's so much more to be found in the scriptures, and so much better content in the scriptures. And so I'm inspired by Naaman, who did that small thing by listening to the prophet and by bathing in the River Jordan 7 times and being healed. And that we learned that these small acts of obedience lead to great blessings. Or the Elisha and the widow, and her giving her last portion, giving everything she had to follow the prophet, and then being blessed forever because of that. I mean, these are individuals that I hope in, as I pass through the veil, that I can thank for their examples. There's so much more in the Book of Mormon, and so much more in our recent years with the Doctrine and Covenants that we're going to embark on now, that we can learn from and be inspired by, and then sports stories. And so that really kind of woke me up, and I'm grateful for that experience. I'm grateful for what it taught me about the value of the scriptures, and that we really have all we need if we rely on the Lord, on his chosen servants, and on the words of the prophets, both today and in the past. And I just have a greater testimony of that now than I ever have in my life.
That is amazing. And we didn't
So
mention
true.
that you are serving on the Young Men's General Board right now. And we are so grateful for that because of your influence. So many young men will be blessed.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around that because I'm with some amazing individuals.
Yes.
I'm
you are.
from it. So.
Well, we sure appreciate you being with us. And I'm so grateful that you brought up the scriptures and Come Follow Me. And we had promised our viewers that we would share just a little tidbit from what we call our Come Follow Me companion. And it is found on the Family History Guide, which is a free site for help with any part of the gathering, any part of family history. And so on the homepage, you just go to the Come Follow Me companion. And each week for each lesson, there are some ways to integrate the gathering and family history into the lesson for Come Follow Me that week. So it's a pretty awesome resource. And this week, we're just finishing December 28th to January 3rd. And one of the ideas is to go back to the prophet's talk, Let God Prevail, from last conference. And he says, I encourage you to make a list of all that the Lord has promised to do for covenant Israel. As you study your scriptures the next 6 months, he said. And he said, you'll be astounded. And then he said, ponder these promises, talk about them with your family and friends, which we are doing right now, and live and watch for these promises to be fulfilled in your life. So we encourage everybody to look forward to this year and studying and putting into your life the scriptures and the gathering and integrate them together just by using this great resource. So there's my advertisement for today for the Come Follow Me companion.
I think about how we feel and what President Nelson said, how we will feel when, just like you said, Peter, we get a chance to meet, excuse me, some of our favorite great heroes from the scriptures. What you're going to feel like when you get a chance to meet your great-great-grandfather that was baptized by Joseph Smith, and to thank him personally. What it's going to feel like to see your dad again when he's not limping.
Yeah.
And all those moments that'll bring us that kind of great joy that we want to prepare for that feeling, and then preparing to meet the Savior and how that will feel. We look forward to those wonderful opportunities as we prepare ourselves in this wonderful coming year. And Peter, you've been such a blessing to us. Anything last you'd like to say?
No, I hope we all have a wonderful, healthy year, and that you know what, I loved when Elder Bednar says that if we're a little bit better today than we were yesterday, that's enough, and that's something I want to live by. So.
Yeah. And you do. And thank you for that wonderful example, and thanks for being with us today. It's been a treat.
Thank you.
And we leave this with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you so much, Peter.